Hi everyone, this is a short video. I'm not usually on YouTube, so there's no need to click like or subscribe, so that should be rather refreshing. But I want to tell you about two bikes. I want to tell you about the Ducati GT1000, which I've owned for about 5 years, and the Moto Guzzi Griso, in this case the 1200 8-valve, although at another time I owned the 1100. And I just want to tell you what it's like to own them and what it feels like. And they're two very similar bikes in some ways, but they're quite different in terms of their characters. The GT1000, I'm not going to tell you all the specs and everything about them. I want to tell you what it's like to own it. I've ridden this bike everywhere. I'm in Spain right now. It's been registered in Switzerland. So I've ridden through the Alps, through the Provence, the Pyrenees. I've had it in Sardinia. I've had it in Corsica. I've done some hardcore touring on it. I usually have Kriega bags on the back, and that's pretty much it. I just took off all the racks because, unfortunately, after 5 years, I have to sell it. This is kind of a forever bike, but I can't because of all sorts of whatever, doesn't matter. I am replacing it with this Griso. Now, why? The first reason is that I was able to get the Griso. I wasn't able to get a GT here in Spain. I like naked standards. I've always had Italian bikes, with one exception being a Triumph Tiger 1050, and we did not bond, alas. But naked standards and Italian bikes have been my buddies. And for those of you who might be wondering what the last one is, it's my girlfriend's bike. It is a Moto Guzzi Bellagio, which is I still think one of their best designed and most beautiful motorcycles, and I'm very fond of it, but I'm not going to talk about that now. The GT, if I had to compare it to riding something else or driving something else, it would be thinking back on those old Porsches from the 1980s, the 911 SCs, the 911 Carreras, before they became unbelievably expensive, high-tech, 400 horsepower things. Back when they were still kind of raw, kind of basic. Elite, high-end sports cars, yes, but there was still just a steel stick that went down to the floor. There was still just a big tachometer on your dashboard. And it made a vroom vroom sound, and it was fun, but still felt tight and light and happy. The GT is very much like that. And it feels light. It feels it's frisky, but it's not as challenging to ride as older Ducatis. The 1000 DS engine is and this is 2025, I'm saying this, is still just a wonderful engine. It doesn't provide too much heat. I've ridden it in 35, 37 degree temperatures in the south of Europe, and I've had no problems with the heat on my legs. It's a great bike for touring, and it's also plenty powerful to have someone on the back. I think it's rated at somewhere around 90 horsepower, but I've had it at altitude, which means anywhere between 2,000 and 2,500 meters, fully laden with stuff, and it was fine. It was fine. There's less air pressure up there, so the engine has to work a little harder, and it's been a peach, right? And I've ridden Ducati 1200, what do you call them? Multistradas. I was the owner of the old Multistradas. I've ridden the new one. It's exceptional, but it's not as raw, it's not as basic, it's not as fun. So in terms of, retro styling, retro bikes, it has all the power, all the capability, and it's been extremely reliable. And the only times I've had problems with it is when I've screwed up. So I had to replace the fuel pump because somebody didn't replace the fuel filter for 14 years. So no wonder it failed, because it couldn't get anything through it, and so I had a couple of bad days in Sardinia, but that's life. Now, let's go on briefly to the Griso. I'm a big fan of Moto Guzzis. I've owned the V11 Sport. I had the Rosso Mondello. And obviously I had the 1100 before this, and now I have the 1200 8 valve. The red seat's awesome. What does that feel like? Well, it's a different kind of feel. It does many of the same things. You can still get you can get a rack on the back. You can tour with this thing, and it rides beautifully. It isn't as light. It's a little heavier. But instead of thinking of it as an old Porsche, you think of it as like at least I do, a bit like a Jaguar XK Coupe or something, or the convertible, I guess, because we get some fresh air. That big 4 or 5 liter engine, I forget what it is, handles well, but it's not a Ferrari, it's not a Porsche. It handles beautifully. It has it stops. I think it stops better than the Ducati. It has much bigger front brakes, and there's just a nice Brembo, of course, and it has it's smoother, easier coming in to a stop. The Ducati can be a little grabby, but all that can be adjusted. This has a lower, deeper rumble, and for those of you who have ridden other, particularly older Moto Guzzis, you know that they've had sort of two characters. When you're riding low down, meaning the RPM is low down, you're at 2, 3, 3.5. You're chugging along. It has almost a Harley-like quality to it. It feels rounded and relaxed, and if you just sort of want to drift off into the world and think about nothing, it's happy to chug along with you. But then there's this second category where you push it up a little bit, and all of a sudden you break through this sort of bumpy zone in the middle, and all of a sudden the engine comes to life. It's almost as though it remembers that once, long ago, it used to be a racing motorcycle, and the engine comes alive. This is what BMWs don't do. BMWs have that wonderful Boxster engine, and it goes up, but as soon as you start going up too high, it doesn't like it, and it sounds like this all the time, and it's very frustrating, and it's doing what you're telling it to, but it doesn't want to. The Griso, they're not the Griso, the Guzzis in general are the opposite. As soon as you break through that barrier and go to that upper end, there's a whole new world there. And it's fun. That's where it gets frisky and zippy through the canyons, and that's when it's a joy. It's as much of a joy, but a different feeling than the Desmodromic L-Twin. I've had 5 Ducatis. I will own more in the future, and unfortunately, I have to get rid of this one, but I'm sure have another one someday. In the meantime, last thing about the 1200 8 valve versus the 1100. The 1100 was a little bit more the way I was just describing Guzzis. The riding position feels identical to me. I'm not going to do the specs, but it feels exactly the same. I know that there have been some 500 components that have changed. I don't feel any of them. What feels different on this bike is that it's less of that dual character quality, and it more has a smoother rev throughout the entire range, from that 2000 up to, I guess it's around 7. It redlines at 8, this one. But all the way up from 2 to 7, it feels really much smoother than any other Guzzi. Any other Guzzi that I've ever owned or ridden. I've ridden the V7, but I haven't owned it. And the little Bellagio here, it's not that little. It's a 940, and it's and I mean, look at that. That is an underappreciated motorcycle, and the riding position is so comfortable. Last thing on the riding position of these two bikes, the Ducati's slightly more upright, and everything feels a bit more compact. a little more compact, but you ride on that all day. The Griso is a tiny bit more canted forward. You can still ride it all day, ride it multiple days, because it's still very, very comfortable and upright, but you're a little more stretched out. I think the knee bend angle is about the same. I can't say that I've really noticed it. I'm 5'9", so I'm pretty average height, and I've been very comfortable on it. The seat on the Guzzi is a little better. The performance seat on the GT is fantastic. It's the most comfortable thing on earth, and you just can't find them. But if you can, buy it. It's wonderful. And in terms of touring, I guess the only thing I would add is that the pipe on the Griso is low enough that you can handle things without much trouble. One thing that's really nice on the Griso is you have these I don't know what they're called. I'm thinking drop points because I'm thinking of military airplanes. But those, and a lot of Japanese bikes have those because they're convenient. But you just strap a big bag on the back. The Ducati, I had racks. You can get racks on them, and I've had everything on it. But right now, it's just for bungee cords and the rest. All right, I hope that gives you at least a little sense of what the bikes are like to own and to ride. And it's a rare thing to be able to see two of them at all in the same place. Sorry I'm not a bit more articulate with this. I am actually a novelist, so I should be a little more clear than I am. But they're wonderful bikes. I'm not really comparing them in order to tell you which one to buy. But if you have the pleasure of owning either of them, you will be very, very happy. Oh, and the last thing, sorry. The seat height on the Griso is a little lower, and it feels that way, and I like it. So if you're a little shorter, men, women, doesn't matter. I think, that's fine. If you're 5'9" and above, the GT's absolutely fine. And then the performance seat is a little bit lower, and you can always, for a couple $100, you can have a custom seat made from taking the pan or taking the seat in to a good place, and they will rebuild you a seat, and you get a little bit lower, and that'll take care of most of your problems without having to do a lot of work on the bike. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.